Good morning. The best view I was able to reach was atop my belly, which is prone to coughing. You may hear me do a little swish and spit or hiccups because the dry mouth is so severe. Anyway, I have this view of the city, and there's steam in the foreground. Wonderful array of clouds. One thing that we may notice is that the lights twinkle. It could be star lights or city lights or lantern lights, whatever tends to help if there's some distance when there's a twinkle. And I'd like to invite you to see that twinkle in the image, which you perhaps cannot, in which case I invite you to see that twinkle in the image that you're conjuring in your mind. I think for most of us, the twinkling is simple, joyous wonder. We don't know if we're thinking, maybe we've learned something about it in a scientific sense at some point, but we just, oh, it's so nice how they twinkle, and that's a big part of it. So we like to invite ourselves So what part of you enjoys the twinkle? Like your artistic side, your child side, your nostalgic side, some side that's hard to name but you know what it is. And maybe I'm being too specific and it's not like neatly described by some side. Maybe there's many sides of you that enjoys or appreciates or is inspired or bemused by. Like I'm inspired by the bouquet of the lights. While you were thinking of that twinkle, I'd like to suggest, of course, that we're not simply looking at twinkly lights. We're not simply opening ourselves to some view that includes twinkly lights. And we're not simply opening our manner of view from a place of childlike amusement or wonder or something like that. And that's all fine, and we may well have done that. But as a meditation here, we're considering that when we see the twinkle, an obvious conclusion is that twinkling thing over there, however we might define it or not, but that twinkliness there is changing. It's varying. It's off and on. It's unsettled, perhaps. I don't mean to imply anything negative here, but we begin to allow our mind to have a bit more contemplativeness here. And the twinkles remain, however wonderfully they remain. It's far, far easier for me to think, okay, I'm looking at change. I'm looking at some instability. This is maybe a little different than if I was to look at a tree or a mountain, for example. Again, we can really get into that and say that you can't look at a mountain without seeing and not see a change and all that. But in sort of rather simple terms, things that twinkle and dazzle and dance are not only we may register as changing, but also rather loose with the truth about now. So, maybe a bit more advanced than for a meditator is to say there's a twinkle, a dazzle, and it might be, wonder-filled and joyous, pleasant, and that's all great. But that is not a varyingness. What's varying is the viewer. And so, what appears way over there to be unstable, perhaps we can come to know is rather not, or likely not. And perhaps it is I that I'm varying. Is that my direction, extent, breadth, depth of focus? Is it my devotion to the moment that lapses, snaps back, fades, crests, dims, flickers? Here I say all these things, and you may receive them as negative and problematic and stuff to fix, and perhaps you could correct for them, and there certainly are teachers and teachings in schools and say, yeah, really, any of those are things that we are going to cover in our session or something. But here I'm not trying to add to the complexity. Even my camera slowly, lapsing. So A, we have the dazzliness of the lights. B, we have the sense that that dazzliness teaches me that something over there is changing. C, we have, the dazzliness that I perceive over there is an impresence here, an ineffective, stick to here. And so, if you're still with us, you can tip by using the stars feature. You can certainly share and support. But let's get on to the last step here. And that is the twinklifying gases of the atmosphere are what cause the twinkle. Which is one of the reasons that if we have a bit more distance, more likely to see a twinkle. So more atmosphere between the light and the observer. And so what we might come to learn or consider or be inspired by is that perhaps I'm speaking in sort of these perfect terms that aren't going to match the real world, but perhaps the light is perfectly stable. Perhaps the viewer is perfectly stable. And the twinkle remains. And the twinkle is created by the space between the viewer and the viewed. And so we could consider, between us, is it emptiness? We can answer that with rational brains or not, or philosophic brains or not, creative brains or not. That's all fine. But we certainly tend to think of it as empty as a default. It's air, it's empty, it's nothing. But it certainly has this potential to suggest varyingness in us, in there, that may not be there. And we're having this meditation today. And thank you for joining us. And we're speaking of it very simply. This, that, and the other thing. But certainly some hybrid of all of these things can be possible as well. But I'd invite you to practice with something that twinkles. And then when your mind recognizes the variation, and I think rather than pushing my luck for a nurse to walk in, I'll bring us to a close here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for tipping me with stars, whatever exactly that means. Thank you for joining my Patreon. Thank you for supporting my GoFundMe. This is the best teaching I can manage from the smiler cancer, whatever recovery room I'm in, I don't know. No, here I am hoping that it says some good love.